We'll call the meeting to order. This is the February 18th, 2014 meeting. We'll note that all commissioners are present for the meeting, and the first item of business is the order of business. Are there any changes to the order of business?
I'll move we approve the agenda.
Second.
With a motion and a second, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. The motion carries. Then we'll go to the consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda you wish to discuss? Not. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have the motion and the second. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mrs. Stuckert?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Mr. Jackson?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. So the motion carries. We'll move to the non-timetable agenda, and the first thing to hear there is our financial report. Mrs. Johnson.
Good evening, Mr. President, Commissioners. I'll highlight a few items from the financial report through December. We'll start with the general fund report. With 100% of the year completed, our property taxes equal $3.5 million, and we're 100% collected compared to budget. Our other taxes and fees totaled $271,000, and we're 111% collected compared to budget. Our intergovernmentals, which are revenues we receive from the state and local governments, totaled $4.2 million, and we're 102% collected compared to budget. Our licenses, fees, and services, which include building permit revenue, oil royalties, and admin fees, was 130% collected compared to budget. Our building permit revenue is down $111,000 compared to last year, and our municipal court fines are up $65,000 compared to last year. Our total general fund revenues equaled $14 million through December, and we're 104% collected compared to budget. Our general fund expenses through December are broken down into groups. The first is our general government, which includes administration, court, finance, and buildings and grounds, and is 108% expended compared to budget. The overage here is due to attorney costs and the purchase of the office building near City Hall, both of which have been amended for. Our public safety includes police and fire and is 85% expended compared to budget. Our engineering and streets is 110% expended compared to budget. The overage here was due to plan reviews in engineering and our additional labor costs in our street department. Our cultural services includes museum and forestry and was 96% expended compared to budget. And our contingency and reserve includes the West River Community Center Major Maintenance Reserve, and our contingency, which includes the purchase of CIP software, LiDAR mapping, insurance increases, street overtime, and construction standards. Our total general fund expenses equaled $13 million through December, and were 96% expended compared to budget. In our enterprise funds, our water and wastewater revenues equal $9 million through December, and we're 123% collected compared to budget. Our expenses and capital outlays totaled $27 million, $16 million of which is a transfer to our building construction fund from the SRF loan proceeds for the water reclamation facility. Our solid waste fund revenue is $4.5 million through December, which is 117% collected compared to budget. And our expenses and capital outlays total $3.4 million, which is 91% expended compared to budget. In our sales tax reports, in our 1% sales tax fund, we received $727,000 of revenue in December, which is up 3.4% for the year. Our 1% sales tax is broken into three groups. The first is our 50% share, which is for street projects and infrastructure. Our second was the 20% share, which is for job creation and senior programs. This segment funds Stark Development, Elder Care, and the RSVP subsidy, along with the Senior Citizen and the Southwest Regional Grant Program. Our expenses through December total $902,000. And the third segment is the 30% share, which is set aside for capital improvements. The items here include a portion of the final BAC pledge payment, a transfer for the trails construction, and park and rec improvements. In our 0.5% sales tax, we received $364,000 of revenue in December, which is also up 3.4% for the year. We have transferred $4.1 million towards the Public Works building construction in 2013 and $868,000 to our general fund. In our hospitality tax, we received $90,000 of revenue in December, which is down 6% over last year. Our expenses include $1 million for the final BAC pledge payment, $50,000 subsidy for Stark County Veterans Memorial, $37,000 for the environmental assessment at the airport, and $89,000 transfer to the general fund for museum expenses. Our occupancy tax shows revenues totaled $47,000 in December, which is down 25% over last year. Our expenses include $324,000 paid to the CVB for their subsidy, $60,000 for the special events grant, $5,000 to the Rough Rider Commission, $18,000 for the downtown revitalization, and $139,000 to the general fund for museum expenses. In our street projects report, we received $624,000 in revenue. This includes $177,000 grant reimbursement from the DOT and the $350,000 transfer from the 30% share for the trails construction. We've expended $3.7 million towards street projects through December. And in our development impact fee program, this slide shows we have a balance of $218,000 at the end of December. There were $3 million of assessments added to the tax roll in 2013, and we now have $1.5 million in projects left to be assessed. Those are some of the highlights of the financial statements. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mrs. Johnson. Are there any questions for her? I have a question about the 2014 budget. I can't remember, did we budget monies from the 50% of the 1% for the street fund in 2014? I know we didn't budget any monies in 2013 because they had a surplus of funds, but
We did. I don't know the total. I know we did not do the entire 50%, but we did a dollar amount, and I cannot.
we did a
remember.
fixed amount.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Just make a comment. That was Ms. Johnson's last report to us, and so I'd just like to personally thank her for all of her work that she's done. She's made our budgeting and our commission meetings very understandable. I think that's probably the biggest component that we work with and that taxpayers expect us to pay the most attention to. I would just say that her hard work and dedication were very helpful, at least to me, in that respect.
Thank you, Commissioner Olmans.
I agree, Tina. You can stay if you want.
We've been trying to emphasize that point for quite some time now, and I'm glad, Commissioner Oltmans, you brought that up. I was going to bring that up myself. Certainly our loss is Trinity's gain, and publicly I'll say we hope she continues to change her mind and stay with the city. But
Okay, well, thank you all for your comments, especially Commissioner Oltmans. I think he speaks on behalf of the entire commission, so thank you for those remarks. Okay, we'll go to item B. This is Department of Transportation, North Dakota Department of Transportation Exit 56 agreement that they've sent us. Mr. Kessel, do you want to introduce this item?
thank you, President Johnson. This item is related to the truck bypass and interstate exchange. The interstate exchange would be a new exchange and titled Exit 56. We've been referring to it as such for quite some time since this project was in its inception. There was a meeting held between the former DOT director and some of our elected officials, myself included, when we were negotiating this process. And at that time, there was a what I'm going to call a soft commitment on behalf of the city to help fund that project to the tune of around $5 million. That number has been perpetuated throughout this project, which is now in the design side, and the DOT is now putting it in a written format. Now, normally, we would present this to you as a report prior to action, and that may be what you should consider this evening as a report. Maybe there needs to be more discussion on this topic specifically. We just got this agreement late last week. We did not have a lot of time to review it. It does include some things that were a little bit unexpected, like lighting, but it does call into question other things, such as annexation. Exit 56 is approximately 2.5 miles outside of our existing borders, but there is a possibility that intersection could become inside our city limits, which may change your perspective on this agreement itself. So if you don't have a motion tonight, certainly the DOT is preferring one, but if you don't, would like to discuss this further, it commits us to that $5 million. We don't have to pay the dollars ourselves. We can privately fundraise those funds as well. But if we don't, it does commit us to possibly losing highway tax distribution future funds to come up with that equivalent of $5 million. So with that, I hope that there's some conversation this evening on what direction you'd like as staff to take.
Well, I should probably comment, since I was one of those public officials at the meeting, and when we met with the North Dakota DOT quite some time ago, the issues were the interim bypass, the eventual truck bypass, a grade separation at States Avenue, and of course a possible exit 56. And all of this was to be funded by the North Dakota DOT. As we discussed exit 56, as I recall, the director of the North Dakota DOT said this is a pretty big deal. It's tough to get exits on the interstate. If we're successful in doing this, we would certainly like participation by the local political subdivisions to the tune of about $5 million. And I think that was reasonable for them to ask that we participate, especially in light of all of the other projects that are going. Now, we agreed not necessarily that the city would fund this, but that we would work with the private entities and the other political subdivisions to get this done. I don't think we should approve this agreement tonight because it obligates the city to do something that's well outside the city limits, even though there's a reasonable chance that in the near future this could be part of the city limits. I think we should try to work with the county, myself, and see if we can come up with a way with the county that the landowners and the businesses in that area that would be greatly benefited by exit 56, that they contribute towards that $5 million. I'm not opposed to some of the city sales tax money going towards this because it's a great benefit for the city if it goes in. There are economic benefits. This would really help remove quite a bit of the truck traffic that's on our city streets now, move it outside the city. So, I mean, I think you can make a strong argument why the city should be involved, but since it's outside the city limits, I think the county has to be party or should be party to this agreement. Mr. Jackson, you were at the same meeting I was at. Maybe you heard some of the things differently, but sure I'd like to hear your perspective of things.
I essentially agree with what you've said. I didn't come away from that meeting feeling that the city would put dollars into that project, but that the city would help facilitate a search for other dollars. Now, I can't disagree that there's probably not justification, but it seems a little bit illogical to me when we're doing so much infrastructure work, we're begging the legislature for more money to finish that infrastructure, and now we're being asked to put money into this infrastructure project. It doesn't quite fit with me. I want to be careful saying that because the DOT has really been generous with projects around Dickinson. There have been some projects that have really helped not only this city but the area of Stark County. So, you know, we can't complain, not at all. But I just find it a little bit, I'm struggling with the logic when we're trying to get a hold of various oil impact monies to finish our infrastructure, and now we're being asked to participate in this. I understand us being asked to facilitate other participation, but I'm struggling with this a little bit.
How do you feel about, you know, the private entities that are really right adjacent to the exit? I mean, as soon as that exit was announced that it was going in, I mean, that land became so much more valuable. Also, we have two large industrial concerns just to the south of that exit, that there's a tremendous amount of truck traffic that is going into one, and when the other one's built, there'll be a lot of truck traffic going there. So this exit 56 really helps them out. I know the city just can't reach out and like special assess outside our city limits, but I'm thinking that those properties, while maybe they shouldn't bear the entire $5 million, should bear a fairly significant portion of that.
Well, I agree, and as you're pointing out, that's going to take a cooperative effort because we can't assess, and you know, that will have to be a cooperative thing. I'm sure that Stark County itself is not planning any local participation in this any more than we were, but this is going to assist the county road system as well as the city road system.
And were they at this meeting as well?
The county? No,
No.
this was just the three of us.
Okay.
I think this is just something that we're going to see in the future from the DOT and the state legislature. That I think they're going to be looking for more commitments from the city to participate in their projects. I just have that feeling. You hear about up in Williston that they want this and this and this, but they don't want to. You know, they're building things that they're saying you want all this money, but you don't want to give anything to contribute to the project.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we're going to see that type of thinking coming up, and you know, $30 million project here, $5 million for us, and 15% or us in the county, or however we do it. I think. Now that's going to be a major intersection when it's completed. You know, we'll have other facilities building out there at that intersection and so on. So I think it's definitely something we need, obviously, take a look at and decide how we're going to approach it.
So I would suspect, Sean, that you would meet with county, you'll meet with the business entities out there. You're probably going to be the one that would spearhead the connecting of all the dots to come up with the financing.
Yeah, Commissioner Holtmans, I think that's exactly correct. There's a tentative plan in place. There was one created shortly after the meeting to tap the private entities so that the city wouldn't have to come up with the full $5 million. You know, I think President Johnson's laid out fairly well who those people would be. I tend to agree that you could argue that if the city does have a financial stake in it, that sales tax could be utilized. We have several county and beyond our borders contributing to that sales tax, and this will help a bigger, broader audience. And Just from a standpoint of projects in the area, they've been mentioned, but just to put a dollar amount on them, what I'm carrying in our CIP plan equates to about $156.5 million that the DOT is investing in the interim bypass, which we're now calling 30th, the overpass at States, the bypass that we're talking about now, and the Interstate Exchange 56. That's about $156 million investment. So obviously a very worthwhile meeting.
And as I said, DOT has really been responsive to our needs. They really have, and we need to be appreciative of that. But I look at this as one infrastructure project with many parts. It's water, sewer, streets, bypasses, interchanges, and we are on the hook for tens of millions of dollars for the improvements to infrastructure that were needed to handle this oil boom. That's the way I look at it. It's one big effort. This is just a part of it.
Well, you're absolutely correct. I mean, in kind of round general numbers, between what we plan to borrow and monies that have come from that will come from our sales tax funds, our like our water fund, even our general fund, we will spend, if my memory's correct, I think when you total all that up, we'll spend about $25 million of those dollars in addition to the $100 million we're going to borrow. So we're already sharing in the expense of the infrastructure buildup. I mean, but the DOT has been good. I think we need to get with the county, understand what the county can do legally. We know what we can do within our city limits when it comes to special assessments and that type of thing. But again, this exit 56 is a game changer. It makes the property in that area so much more valuable. It is a major assistance to the industrial development right directly to the south. I think it's logical that we would ask them to share in some of the cost of that interchange. And so I think we need to meet with the county. I would recommend we defer action on this and ask Mr. Kessel to meet with the county, and if need be, he can take one or two commissioners with him too.
Mayor Johnson, can we discuss number 6 here? If you're going back to that to meet with them, the city will, at its own expense, maintain or cause to be maintained the roadway lighting installed as part of this project. I think we need to share that. I don't know why the city would want to.
Wouldn't you think that would be county, and then if it was annexed into the city, then we would take over? But it really doesn't make sense that we would be the maintenance entity when it's a county or state road at that point.
And it sounds like it would be above the $5 million?
Yeah, we take on that responsibility, Commissioner, right now for most of the state roads. So, for instance, on 22 and other, the Villard, we do a lot of that maintenance today. Granted, the difference is that's inside our city limits, as you pointed out. This could be inside our city limits when it's completed. That's approximately 18 months to 2 years out before this will be completed. I certainly can't roll out my crystal ball and tell you whether or not it'll be inside our city limits. I know there'll be pressure for us to bring it inside our city limits from the developers that are in that area. So, and that is the sub-area plan that you've heard us talk about. We hope to have that initiated and at least begun. I don't know if it'll be complete in that time frame. I believe Community Development Director Corton believes it can be. So if that's the case, then we should have good direction on making a recommendation to this body on future annexations. But I'll certainly be happy to meet with county and other officials to try and put together a plan and bring it back to the City Commission and present that. And if you get a call, please say yes and come help.
Is there any commissioner that believes we should take action on this tonight?
No.
Okay, so then we'll just defer action. We'll direct you to meet with the county, and we'll go from there.
I do have one comment, Mayor Johnson. When you talk an annexation, are we looking, obviously we got to study this here, but would we be talking of a contingency annexation from the city limit following Highway 10 out to this place, or is this something that you do spot annexation, if that's what you'd call it?
Well,
I don't think we know.
yeah,
And the other thing about annexation, you gotta remember, is you have to have willing landowners. It's not just the city saying you're in and that's it. I suspect that if the city continues to grows to the west, as Mr. Kessel mentioned, we're gonna get pressure from developers to annex that land. It could be, I think, initially a fairly narrow strip, really right along the interstate.
Kind of like we did with Sundance,
Mhm.
Fulton Village.
Yes, yeah, again, because you have to have, the city has to be willing and the landowners have to be willing. And it's how much more growth is there going to be? It's hard to say. I think what they envision doing at exit 56, and again, that's where the real truck bypass intersects the interstate. I think that could be a real major development at just around that entire exit. And then especially, we have two major industrial properties to the south there. Either one by themselves are significant, but having both of them there, very significant. So I think there's a reasonable chance, exit 56 could be the western edge of the city, but it might be a pretty narrow strip. It's hard to say.
Yeah, and Commissioner Steiner, I would agree with President Johnson. I think it's more likely to be interstate rather than Highway 10, at least initially. Now, I will say that the Highway 10 corridor, because of the wastewater line that's going to connect the Dakota Prairie Refinery and Dickinson, will obviously have, and we're planning for development there as well.
Mr. President and Commissioners, just to add something to what Mr. Kessel had mentioned prior, is that as part of the sub-area plan, we're looking at an annexation plan for that. And you'll public comment, the consultant that we end up hiring and staff, and then also your involvement will be how should we annex and what areas do we feel appropriate. Maybe a linear annexation initially and then coming back and filling it as we traditionally have. Instead of doing linear, we've done more of a square complete annexations. But that's part of the plan. That's an essential element with our sub-area plan will be how should we address that roughly 5,000 acres and how should we bring it in and what would be a logical pattern for annexation. So that will be part of that plan. It's going to be one of the major components that I would see as part of it.
Okay, so we have the decision here to defer and try to meet with the county. Okay. Well, I think it's close enough to 5 o'clock. We have a timetable agenda item at 5. It's a Hub convenience store presentation. Mr. Kessel, is there anything you want to add by way of introduction?
Just like to mention that we have had a discussion not only with the presenters this evening about the creation of a liquor license class, that it does not exist today. More than likely, I believe the request is going to be for a beer-only class that could be more than likely unlimited. But this discussion is one that should be public in nature because it will affect existing liquor license holders. And I have handed out before you, the commission meeting started, a formal request for another of our limited liquor license be added to. So I think with that, we have Chris Fritter and Jared Sheeler in the audience to make the formal presentation with regard to the beer-only off-sale request.
Oh, did I forget that? Okay, excuse me, Mr. Sheeler. Let's go back to the financial report. Would there be a motion to approve it as presented?
I'll make, second.
We have the motion second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mrs. Stuckert?
Aye.
Mr. Jackson?
Aye.
Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Did I miss anything else, Mrs. Binstock? Okay. Sorry about that, Mr. Sheeler. You may,
And then, Mr. Kessel, just for clarification, it's not just beer, it's beer and wine that, but our licensing is,
No, we have a beer and wine. I mean, that was the original, going to be the original request was for beer and wine. I believe that's been updated and changed to a beer
okay, I
only.
was just looking at the information that we had. So. Okay.
well, let's hear what they have to say. And I know.
All right, you'll have to pardon me, this is a bit surreal, as I always enjoyed watching these meetings on TV growing up as a child and through high school. Moved away for 15 years, and a few weeks later after moving back, here I stand before you. But I appreciate what you guys do, and thank you for your time. Ladies and gentlemen of the Dickinson City Commission, Administrator Kessel and Mayor Johnson, thank you for allowing us to speak today regarding our desire to see a new class of liquor license added here in Dickinson. My name is Jared Sheeler, and behind me somewhere is my business partner, Chris Fitterer, and we intend to open the first edition of the Hub convenience stores in Dickinson this fall. I myself am a veteran of the convenience retailing industry, having worked in the industry for the past 15 years. I currently serve on the board of directors for the National Association of Convenience Stores, while Chris serves on the board of directors for the North Dakota Petroleum Marketers Association, which is the state's foremost association for the convenience store industry. We know that the topic of an additional liquor license class that allows convenience stores to sell beer and wine was briefly discussed in a city commission meeting on September 16th of last year. To summarize, here are some of the discussion points from that meeting. City Attorney, and these are directly from the minutes from that meeting. City Attorney Coling stated that restrictions could be attached to this license as the commissioners feel needed. He also stated that convenience stores could be required to build a separate area with this off-sale. President Johnson states that there are 17 on-off sale liquor licenses in Dickinson, and the city is considering adding another for 2014, so he feels 18 should be enough. Johnson feels that if this license is opened, then it would make it much easier for minors to purchase alcohol. Commissioner Jackson agreed with President Johnson and does not support an additional class. Police Chief Dustin Dossinger agrees that the city is moving on uncharted territories, and this would not be good for the community at this time. The discussion ended with those points being made. So we're here today to ask you to reconsider opening this license class for convenience stores. Among the reasons we believe this would be beneficial for Dickinson residents are lower prices due to increased competition, the ability to compete with C-store businesses outside of city limits who are allowed to sell beer as part of Stark County's beer laws. This also means more tax dollars directly to the city of Dickinson. More jobs for Dickinson residents, more convenient purchase options for off-sale alcohol, and further, the addition of an off-sale class as opposed to greater expansion of both on and off-sale promotes a safer driving environment. We do know that this topic is one that will receive strong opposition, both from some people sitting at the table in front of me, as well as some current license holders in Dickinson, some who I'm very close to, some I'm very familiar with and hold a great deal of respect for as business people and as people. We know that perhaps the city believes that at this time you have bigger fish to fry than considering adding another license class. But that doesn't mean that this isn't the right thing to do. If liquor license regulations in Dickinson were rewritten from scratch, I believe, just in talking to a few people, that the language would emulate that of other bigger cities in North Dakota, and convenience stores would currently be selling beer. As displayed by 41 of the other United States, beer in convenience stores is a common sense proposition. After all, more than 78% of all convenience stores in the country sell beer, and 32% of all beer in the USA including bars, is sold in convenience stores. To address some of the concerns expressed in the September 16th, 2013 City Commission meeting, the first one being convenience stores could be required to build a separate off-sale area. Well, in fact, it's already required by the North Dakota Century Code. Chapter 5-02-02.1, and I won't read the language, but it says that if convenience stores or grocery stores do sell alcohol, it does have to be separate from everything else in the store, and it has to be age restricted as far as people even passing through into that area. Our recommendation would be to expand on that. A convenience store is exactly that first, a convenience store. And if an additional class would be created, we believe that it would be important that each convenience store remains as their primary business. So we recommend that only 25% of floor space within a given convenience store on display, including both floor space and cooler space, should be allotted to beer. All other regulations would need to be met under the North Dakota Century Code. Further, under that 25% display space rule, it simply doesn't make sense for every convenience store to be able to sell beer because some of them just have small footprints. Chris would probably kick me for saying this, but he's part owner of West Dakota Oil. That's a relatively small store, and to me, it doesn't make sense for that kind of store to convert into a beer retailer because they're primarily a convenience store and they don't have much space for anything else in there. So to alleviate this concern, we recommend that a convenience store must be at least 3,200 square feet in size in order to qualify for selling beer. Another concern was beer in convenience stores would make it easier for minors to purchase beer. Frankly, I find that insulting as we're an industry called on to provide age verification for tobacco, lottery, and like I said, in 41 of the 50 United States, beer. Age verification is a strength of this industry, not a weakness. We and I take pride in being responsible retailers. A further recommendation from the hub would be, per the North Dakota Century Code, shoppers must be 21 years of age or older to enter into the dedicated beer area. I also believe that there should be a requirement that point of sale systems, the systems used to ring up a beer transaction, should have age verification technology built into it. Whereas you have a scanner that scans an ID and not only can tell if the person is underage, it can tell if the ID is fake. And if it's not accepted by the scanner, is interfaced with the point of sale system and will in fact reject the sale. That technology exists, and I believe if we move forward in this, that should be a mandate. A further recommendation, as Administrator Kessel said, make the new license class only beer only. Require all employees who will be working in the beer area to undergo underage sales training once per year, and require all convenience stores selling beer to have a written policy with consequences on how to handle a team member who makes an underage sale. In the packets I gave you, there's a lot of different information on the importance of the beer industry and beer sales to convenience industry. I have some handouts on the economic impact of beer in North Dakota and how we believe we can expand on that. You know, we know that, again, that this discussion was already had about 6 months ago. We would ask that, you know, obviously with the short time period we have today, that you consider bringing this back to the table and looking at it more holistically, possibly with further study from the city of Dickinson, as well as some time for public comment, as I would imagine that there's others in the city who feel differently than we do. I thank you for your time, and if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Mr. Shearer, thank you. Mr. Kessel, did you indicate you have a comment or question?
I do have a question. Thank you, President Johnson. Mr. Sheeler, you mentioned in one of your recommendations that the store be 3,200 square feet in size. Is that inclusive or exclusive of the 25% that you also proposed dedicated to beer display and storage?
That would be inclusive. 3,200 square feet is fairly large for a convenience store. And you know, I did in my recommendation include just floor space and then any cooler space, which includes storage, but not any offices or restrooms or anything like that. So it takes a hefty store to get up to 3,200 square feet.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Are there any other comments or questions by commissioners? Okay, thank you. Is there any direction you would like to give Mr. Kessel at this time, or do you want to think about this and maybe give him a chance to come back with his thoughts too? Mr. Colling's not here. I would think our city attorney would be a pretty integral part of whatever discussion we might have. But
I think we'd have to have a public hearing on it also. I know we want to listen to both sides, and I'm sure there's another side to this out there, so we'll schedule a public hearing on it first thing.
Well, I agree. I mean, if we're going to, if we move forward on this issue, you'd have to have, I think, a series of public hearings. But I think to move forward on it, either the city staff is going to have to recommend that we move forward on it, or one or more commissioners is going to have to recommend we move forward on it. And you don't have to do anything this evening, but, you know, I think that's what has to happen. I mean, either one or more of you has to say, I think this is an idea worth following up on, and then you're going to go through the entire ordinance process, which would include any public hearings, I think.
Yeah,
Mr. Kessel?
President Johnson, at this time, we don't have a recommendation in terms of a ordinance for you to review. That would be obviously one of the documents we'd put together for you if you want to pursue this as a new license class. So we'd be answering some of the questions and probably using some of the proposals or modifying the ones that were made this evening. But I certainly agree that public hearings, one of my recommendations to Mr. Sheeler and Mr. Fitter was to seek out other current license holders and let them know about their proposal this evening.
You know, and I appreciate all the information that they've gathered for us and some of the suggestions. I guess just my first blush with looking at some of the recommendations of 3,200 square feet for the retail space footprint, and a point-of-sale system that has age verification. Those seem like two, you know, reasonable and important considerations to make. But what I would guess that it would do, if 3,200 square feet is a large convenience store footprint, would actually preclude any of the existing convenience stores in our community from doing this, because their footprint wouldn't, you know, if we took that language and incorporated it, what we are saying is that if you wanted to participate in this, you would need to expand your current footprint to at least 3,200 square foot, and you would need to purchase this point-of-sale software in order to do it. So if that was the language that you put in place, thinking that you're going on the conservative side, what you're doing is making a special license for one new convenience store that's coming in, because they are the one that's building and going to meet those specifications. It's just one way to, you know, I like to look at everything from each direction. I would just say it precludes everybody else from doing it.
And Commissioner Oltmans, I do like the idea, if you decide to move forward, to have some kind of parameter.
Sure.
3,200 may be too large, as you're suggesting, and I don't know how
either.
large our convenience stores are in town. I know several have expanded, some are planning future expansions, but that's a number that obviously could be played with. Maybe the number's
Right.
2,500.
I don't know either.
Yeah. That's something we can research in our presentation to you in an ordinance, if you direct us to do so.
The other issue, as Mr. Johnson pointed out, is we have a request from another business here that would like a full license. If the convenience store is it's not approved or we don't continue with it, this would not, they could still bid on the full one if we
Sure.
decide to issue another license.
Yes.
So the question is, do we have enough population for one or two more licenses? So that's, I mean, that's a discussion we're going to have.
That's entirely accurate, Commissioner Steiner. Yeah, they would be eligible, along with any other convenience store, to buy a new license
Right.
if you issue one.
We already have the highest per capita rate as far as liquor stores, liquor licenses. I really, in my opinion, if you have one, you give one to a convenience store, then you have to give them to the other ones we have. So I agree with Mr. Steiner, if we need to go with full, if we're going to go. But have public hearings, see what the public says.
Well, again, I think the process is, if you think this is a reasonable idea, any one of you can request that Mr. Kessel and Mr. Colleen and the rest of the city staff work up a draft ordinance that would accommodate this request, and then it goes through the formal process, which would include, I think in this case, several hearings. If none of you requests it, then we don't take any action, and I guess you see what kind of response you get individually from citizens and get a sense of whether or not it should be requested at a later date. But if none of us have any intention of requesting this, I don't see a point in just doing public hearings, because people can do what Mr. Sheeler just did. They can request an opportunity to address the city commission. They can get on the timetable agenda. They can address us at the end of a meeting. And of course, if they are not comfortable addressing us when we're in a formal meeting, they can always address us individually, which happens quite frequently for all of us. So.
Well, I know in our September meeting, I had called on Chief Dossinger, and we just don't have the staff to take care of another establishment. We're ready. Here he is.
Well,
I think we're talking two different issues there.
yeah, we might be.
Not really. Liquor
But-
licenses are liquor licenses.
Chief, did you want? Yes, you may.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the commission. Visiting with my staff about this matter, my staff and I are personally against this. We should not be making it more convenient for people to purchase even beer in a convenience store. The state is doing what they can legislatively to reduce the number of drunk drivers on our streets. It's always a constant battle to remove minors consuming alcohol. Just because we don't have beer in our convenience stores now doesn't mean that we're behind the times. We might be right on the money.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief, but, okay. I don't want this to turn into a public hearing tonight. I mean,
Right.
if the public will is that we have a public hearing, we'll do that. But again, if any of you would like to request now that this ordinance be drafted, you may do so. If you want to think about it and maybe make a request later, that's also your prerogative. I just, I don't want the meeting to end here. So we have several other items, so Mr. Jackson.
I'm not at all ready to ask that an ordinance be drafted. I'm certainly open to hearing more information. I'm not sure how I'd come down on this question right now. I try to stay open-minded, but the first thing that comes to my mind is it won't be just one convenience store. Whether there are new stores or people put additions on their stores or whatever, it'll be a number of convenience stores, and if it's convenience stores, why not grocery stores? I don't know where it starts and stops here. I'm not sure I'm going to help you very much here. I'm open to hearing more and getting better informed. I wouldn't ask that an ordinance be drafted right now. No.
Yeah, I would say let the discussion go where it goes, and we're always happy to entertain.
Okay, anybody else? All right, well, I'm not hearing a request for an ordinance to be drafted at this time, so there's no action to be taken here. I'm going to move to the next agenda item, which is a public hearing on an MDI multifamily housing revenue bond. Is there anything you want to say about this, Mr. Kessel?
Just a few things, President Johnson. You took action on this item several months ago. The item is in regards to financing several low-income housing units throughout the state of North Dakota, currently owned by MBI. They missed their deadline that was set in the documents that you approved. In order to move forward, we would have to reissue or reapprove the same agreement. And just a reminder that the city has no financial responsibility with regard to the bond issue. It doesn't count against us in terms of bond issuance. We simply have one of the properties that is going to be refinanced in our community, and so it is required us to then recognize the fact that property will be refinanced. You did approve this the last time it was brought before you. It is my recommendation that you do the same this evening.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kessel. With that, we'll declare the public hearing open. Anybody that wishes to comment regarding this issue may do so now. Just come to the podium, state your name, and we'll hear your comments. Is there anybody from the public that would like to comment regarding this issue? There's no one that wants to comment, so we'll declare the public hearing closed. In our packet is a resolution regarding this item, and so, Mr. Kessel, it's your recommendation that the commission, which has already done this once, do it again and approve this resolution. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And I see on the bottom of my agenda, it says the next resolution is 14-2014, so I'm assuming that's the number for this one?
I'm glad it's on your bottom of your agenda.
Mr. Colling, we're a little lost.
I make a motion to approve resolution number 14-2014.
Second.
We have the motion, the second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mrs. Stuckert?
Aye.
Mr. Jackson?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, the motion carries. So we have a 5:15 timetable agenda item, and that's to hear from the Dickinson Museum Center Director, Dan Ingram. And welcome, Mr. Ingram. Hustle. There we go. Very good. Do you have slides to show us?
I don't have slides. I
Okay.
thought about it, but then I thought it might put you to sleep. So I chose instead just to address you
Right.
in the raw, as it were. Greetings from the Dickinson Museum Center. It's been an exciting year for us. I thought what we would do is give you just a little bit of background of what we've been doing over the last year, and then present you with the strategic plan that we worked on last year. It's been exciting, as I said, and busy at the Museum Center. We had over 8,500 visitors to the actual museum itself, in addition to what I can only guess is several thousand people who have recreated through the park, have walked their dogs. I'm not sure how you count the people who walk their dog every day, whether that's one person or 365 people. So, and inasmuch as we don't have a people counter or a dog counter, I can say we've gone through a remarkable number of mutt mitts. So I think the park has been very popular, at least with people and their four-legged friends. We closed our World War I exhibit this last year, opened our exhibit on rodeo photography by basically a local photographer who later went on to make it big in the postcard business, Ralph Doubleday. Of course, we've been continuing on with our preserving our photographic collections and improving our photographic memory. We have scanned and have on the internet now over 5,500 photographic images, and that's just a very small quantity. I would estimate about 5 of 200 boxes of negatives that we have in the collection. So we're going to be at that for a little while. It has been a great opportunity, I think, with the photographic project to bond with the community. People have been very excited about the photographs that they see in the newspaper, as well as both on our website and on our Facebook page. And if you haven't visited our Facebook page, please do, and please like us. It helps us a lot when people like us. So the real reason I'm here tonight is that we spent a good portion of the fall working on a strategic plan for the Museum Center, and it has been presented to you tonight in its lovely bound volume, because I know that I sent the computer version to you, but I think this is a little easier to read. The process is described, so I won't go through that. I think what I will do is talk about the strategic goals that we've established for the center. They basically come in down to 5 elements. We're establishing what we're calling the Dickinson Museum Center Consortium, which will bring together at this point the Yoakum Museum boards, with the Stark County Board, Stark County Historical Society Board. We'll be adding additional members to the consortium as we get it organized. What we want to do with the consortium is to speak to you with a single voice. It's important, I think, for us to simply have one point of contact, and for us to get the groups at the Museum Center together to establish the priorities for what we want to do there, and what we can do to serve you and serve the visiting public as well as the local public. Secondarily, we also want to begin addressing the deferred and ongoing maintenance issues that we have with the facilities. Some of these things we've already begun to address as part of the budget process. We'll be doing some roofing this year to the church and the depot and the park, and that's already included in the budget for this year. We'll also probably be addressing the problem of the concrete heaving in front and behind the Yoakum Museum again. Apparently, for the 3rd time in its history, the concrete at both the front entrance and the rear exits of the building has lifted itself up, and so we'll be working on that. We were working on that last week when we jackhammered out the concrete, which was not allowing us to open the emergency exits. So there'll be some issues there, but we're putting together, obviously, a plan for addressing any of the other ongoing maintenance issues that we need to deal with. Thirdly, we're looking at how we might augment the paid and volunteer staffing of the Museum Center. I'm happy to tell you that the Yoakum Museum Board and the Stark County Historical Society have agreed to underwrite the cost of a half-time employee, so they'll be reimbursing the city for a, I guess we call them a seasonal part-time employee, which is a non-benefited position that will be someone who can work 20 hours a week for us. That extra set of hands, I think, will be very important as we move forward in the 4th goal that we have, which is increasing our resource development for education, collections, and capital projects. We're going to be working on a variety of projects this year that, in addition to continuing the scanning project with the archive, we'll also be working on cataloging our collections and working with them in a new interpretive plan that we'll be developing as well as part of this year's work plan. We're developing what we in museums call an interpretive plan, which essentially analyzes what stories we tell, who we tell them to, and how we might best address the needs of both our existing visitor and new visitors that we can attract to the museum center itself. So that will be a core element of our program. And finally, we want to begin to develop a more distinct branding and marketing program for the Dickinson Museum Center. And we'll be looking at developing a new logo. And everyone associated with the consortium have increased their budgets for marketing coming this year. So I think we'll be able to begin to develop a new identity package for the museum center itself. Part of what came out of our planning meetings was the need for wayfinding in our community, not only for people to find the museum center, but just in general to navigate through the city of Dickinson. And what we would propose is that you consider developing a wayfinding plan for the entire city. As our city has grown and changed, and as institutions are moving around in different parts of the city, it's really important that we put together an integrated wayfinding plan that would enable people to find things like City Hall, the library, the hospital, the college, the schools, the fire station. And I think one of the things that I think Mr. Corton will probably agree with me is that we need to go forward with this in a way that we can control the design and the look of wayfinding, and that we can work with a planning or engineering group that can tell us exactly where we need to put the signs and what the signs should tell you. When I was in Pennsylvania, our museum undertook this for the city because the city was dysfunctional. And so we had to put together the effort to help you navigate through the city. And it was a little more complicated there simply because everyone referred to neighborhoods with names. But if you weren't from there, you didn't know where Cambria City was, or Moxham, or Westmont. And in fact, one of my first experiences there was I was interviewing there, and I asked how to get to a particular part of town, and someone gave me the direction that says, well, if you go past where the old high school was. I think what we need to do is think about how we navigate through our community. So that is one of the things that I think not only do we want to look at how we can brand and wayfind to the museum, but I think that should be part of an integrated process. And it will help clean up. I think we have a variety of signs that are spread throughout the community of different eras, and this would give us an opportunity to sort of control that. And I know it becomes quite complicated working with the Department of Transportation and all of that, but I think it's something that is worth considering and certainly would be a good use of hospitality tax money. We'll be opening a new exhibit this May called Obsolete. We're going to be looking at things which either are or shortly will be obsolete. If you think about things like a rotary dial phone, or a fountain pen, or a button hook. There are a variety of things, or a floppy disk. There are a variety of things that I think we can look at materials that are both, of recent vintage and also of historic vintage to look at and think about in terms of obsolescence and even things like planned obsolescence. So we'll be doing that. So in general, I just want to ask you to think about our strategic plan. I think the goal would be for you to adopt it as something that could be an addendum to the comprehensive plan or not. It's really up to you about how we proceed with how official you want to get with acknowledging that we've done the strategic plan and that you are supportive of, I'm hopeful, supportive of the effort. So if you have questions.
Well, I have a question. When did the rotary dial become obsolete?
Well,
Did I miss
about,
something?
about the time that they're quit being operators,
Oh. Okay.
when we went to digital.
Are
Or
there
tele.
questions or comments?
Mr. President, question, Mr. Ingram. On your SWOT analysis under the weaknesses, there's 4 concerns I have there. Too many voices undefined, focus on the past, lack of united vision, and communication on all levels. How are you going to be addressing that? Because those were some weaknesses we had before you came. I mean, those were, if you want to call them
And
strong
I think this
weaknesses.
process has gone a long way to helping, certainly the partnership between the Yoka Museum and the Stark County Historical Society is as strong now as it's ever been. We have been working cooperatively with the photographic collections and the exhibits. We're going to clearly, with the obsolete exhibit, be working together. We're going to be doing joint programming. So I think a lot of the things that were in the past problems are no longer. I think we've sort of started with a clean slate now, and I've been really pleased with the reception between the groups for each other. And I think a lot of it was just misunderstandings.
When was your SWOT done?
This was done in the fall, just this last fall.
So is the consortium, is that kind of an answer to these
I
weaknesses?
think it is. It's a way for part of the issue was communication. Is that the groups just weren't talking to one another, and there was a whole lot of assuming going on, and well, we know what happens there. So I think that we've come a long way in working together and talking together, and the consortium should be a way for us to bring concerns before they get out of control. And I think this is going to be a really good thing for the people who participate.
Well, I like your plan, I like your vision, and you're working hard up there, I know that.
Well, we're trying, and it's been very interesting because I've never quite seen a structure like this before. So it's been new for me to work with this many plates that need to be spun.
And you're still a no charge?
Exactly. We are free and hoping to be able to stay that way.
President Johnson,
Kessel?
I've been very supportive of the concept of a consortium even before it was created, so I'm very glad to see that. The speaking with one voice, I think, is so important, much like the Dickinson Downtown effort. It's very similar to that. One of my concerns, I know you share that as well, is there seems to be a missing group in that consortium, and would you like to address that
I
to a
think I
certain
can
degree?
just say that the Dinosaur Museum has chosen not to participate in the consortium. I think there's a variety of reasons for that. One is that institutionally they are just at a different point in their history and experience. A lot of the things that we address in this plan simply don't apply to them. Their collections are cataloged. And their interpretation is likely not going to change, so they don't need to do some of those things. So I think overall, that we may be able to coerce them to come and join us, but it'll be up to them. You can lead the horse to water.
They do charge at the Dinosaur Museum.
They do, yeah, and it's still a modest fee. I mean, I think it's
Not part of that charge. Is some of that coming back to you guys?
no. They need that to underwrite the costs of the Dinosaur Museum itself, and they run a very tight ship. I mean, there's not a lot of money rolling in. So,
Mr. Jackson,
I too want to really compliment you on this. I think this effort is a good effort. I think the other things that I sense are happening at the Museum Center, really good efforts, and I want to compliment you. I know you'll be coming back to us at budget time, and I hope you do. I hope you do.
oh, I will.
I know you will. I do think that it would probably be meaningful not only for staff, but for others if we do formally make this part of the comprehensive plan, or whatever the right way to do that is. And, you know, at some meeting from now, that we do take some formal action to memorialize it, if you will. I think that is appropriate. The other thing that you mentioned only briefly in here that I know I'm really interested in hoping that you pursue is capital campaign for certain things. I think there is interest in the community. I think the time is right. And I think in a way it holds your feet to the fire and ours to do that and get out there. We've talked about that before, how the
And
community.
I think what we need to do is concentrate particularly on our sort of back of the house issues of cataloging and getting intellectual and physical control over the collection so that we know what we have. And then I think that capital campaign is likely going to be about a storage facility for us because we are stuffed to the gills at this point. And it's important that we continue to collect. As I look at our collection, there are a lot of things that we need to, that we would think of almost as contemporary items that we need to start warehousing and keeping for all time. And so it's going to be really important that we consider doing a collection storage facility, even if it's something where it could be a storage facility, but it could be what we call in the museum business open storage, where you can still go in and look at everything. So, but I think it's incumbent upon the organizations to think about a capital campaign and to do that in a way as we develop the organizations and move forward.
Yeah,
I think this
too.
is all about momentum. And I did just want to take the opportunity to introduce several members of the consortium, the presidents and vice presidents of the Yoakum Museum Board and the Stark County Historical Society. If you could all stand and introduce yourselves.
I am Tyler Shook. I'm president of Stark County.
There's apparently been a coup. And
I'm Jen Sherpine. I'm the vice president of the Yoakum Board. I'm Jenny Ray. I'm the vice president of Stark County. I'm Chris Locker. I'm the president of the Yoakum Board.
Well, thank you all for being here. I would echo just some of the comments that you've heard from the other commissioners. I'm supportive of the plan. One thing I might suggest you change, in a lot of areas you have the city administrator as being part of this, and that's fine, but I think it should say city administrator and or his or her designee.
yes,
You know,
and I think that's actually what we intended,
Okay. Yeah.
because we don't think he's going to show up.
No, he may or may not, but I mean, the situation that the city is in, the city
Yeah,
administrator's time is demanded by many. Even the mayor has to make appointments 3-4 days in advance to get in to see him, so.
Yes. No, I think
But
our
I mean,
assumption.
if I agree with Commissioner Jackson that it should be memorialized, but I would recommend that that change be made, so if we do formally adopt it into the plan, that he has some room to send someone else to the meetings too, when he can't be there. Other comments, questions?
It's good to see all four of them in a row.
Exactly.
Prior, they'd be in different rows.
We've come a long way.
Yes.
Well, I too have enjoyed the functions that you've had at the museum, the displays. It's been very nice to come over there and enjoy some snacks and beverages and
Well, and we're trying
see
to
the
do
exhibits.
more and more of that to reintroduce people to the museum. There have been, it's been open a long time, but a lot of people either haven't visited in a long time or as with most museums, only visit when somebody's in from out of town.
Right.
So,
Okay.
all right.
Anything else here? Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, we're going to go back to the non-timetable agenda. We'll go to item 4C, and that's to hear reports, and we'll start with the hiring journal, and Human Resource Coordinator Namanek is here.
Good evening, President Johnson, Commissioners. We have quite a few positions open right now with the city. We'll start off at the top with police officer. I don't want to say it too loudly without knocking on wood, but it looks like we're getting close to being filled with that position. We have 3 openings and 3 offers pending right now. They're in the polygraph background stage, so if everything goes well there, we could be full staff there. Library director, we will be doing our 2nd interview on that position this week. Sanitation supervisor, we've kind of held off on this position for a bit. We are looking at possibly making some changes to that job description, so we may be seeing something new come across on that soon. Sanitation labor, some of our public works positions again have been real tough to fill. Sanitation labor, we've opened, hired, lost the employee, opened, hired again. We are in the interview process. We'll be doing interviews tomorrow again. So that's been several months trying to fill those. Sanitation operator, again, same kind of thing. We have 3 openings. Last time we opened the position, we had nobody apply. So we've reopened it again, and we've got 3 positions to fill there. Street maintenance operator, we just hired 2 individuals. We had 3 full-time, 1 part-time position open. We filled 2 of the positions, and then we decided to go a little different avenue. We took the 1.5 time positions and made it into a senior street position, and hoping to get someone with a little bit more experience. Maybe somebody could help with some of the training and that sort of thing. Not much luck. We had 1 applicant apply, and he's from out of state and wasn't interested in the end to come here for an interview. So we've reopened that position. Water utility operator, same kind of thing. We just interviewed, did not have any luck. We've opened the position again, and we're still in that phase, taking applications for that. We will be opening our advertising positions real soon for the new wastewater treatment facility. Custodian position, we have the position for the Public Works facility open, and we just did interviews on that today. We have an engineering technician position open. We had 1 applicant apply, and he didn't sound like he was interested in interviewing. So we'll reopen that as well. And property appraisers, we've got 2 new positions for this year for assessing. We just opened a property appraiser, and then the other position will be for a chief or an assistant appraiser that we'll have to create a job description for. Any questions on any of those?
Mrs. Namanek, where do we advertise all? Just through job service or?
It depends on the level of position, and sometimes I work with the supervisor on where they might want to advertise. Most of these positions, when you're talking a laborer or an operator position, don't pay enough to bring someone in from out of state. So if they aren't living here, they can't afford housing here. So we try to advertise locally for those. It just depends. I just got a multi-state deal with advertising in North Dakota, Montana, Wyoming, several different papers, and I did advertise in that and advertise all of our openings so that we can disperse the cost of it throughout the departments.
So it's housing is the issue, basically?
For most of these positions, some of the other positions, we find that online advertising works really well, and that's a little bit less expensive than running in newspapers. But for operators and laborers, yeah, you really need them to be local because they can't afford the housing here if they aren't already here.
Thank you.
President Johnson, if I could just remind the commission, the two property appraiser positions that you approved through the budget process is our effort to try to do a residential reappraisal throughout the community over the next few years. If we are unable to hire these two positions, we most likely then will have to go to hiring a consulting firm to do that. And if you recall, during the budget process, the cost to do that was quite expensive, probably in that $1 million range. So we're trying to do this in-house. If we're not successful, the unfortunate reality is we're probably going to have to do it out of house, and it's going to cost us quite a bit more money. So I just want to keep that issue on your radar screen because it underlines how important it is for us to try to get these positions hired, not just those, but others throughout the city.
Do we need them full-time positions or part-time?
Well, in this case, for those particular positions, they definitely need to be full-time, or at least full-time equivalents. And these are professional positions. Maybe Assessor Hirschfield has a different opinion, but I think full-time is the way to go in this regard. We have job shared in the past. I mean, we are open to options when it comes to the hiring process. As Ms. Nominuk mentioned, we took a 1.5 or 1.25 time positions and created a 1 FTE or full-time equivalent so that we could turn it into a senior, so the budget was neutral to try and attract a different level of employee, and we're so far unsuccessful. So we are open and trying as many options as we can think of to try to get adequate staff.
Other comments, questions? Again, it sounds like you have plenty of work to do. Good luck.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Kessel, we'll just turn it over to you. You can make your reports as you see fit.
Thank you, President Johnson, Commission. The next item in the agenda then is the sewer rate study, and this is kind of an FYI. We have engaged Apex to conduct a sewer rate study to determine what our rates should be. As you are well aware, we are undergoing a great deal of construction. We are financing the vast majority of that construction, and we also have to add staff related to the operations of those structures. So Apex is doing this as a no-cost add to their existing contracts. They are researching rates for us so that we can bring back to this commission an educated rate suggestion or recommendation. This also becomes paramount because of the two outside entities that will also be providing wastewater treatment services to, and that's the Dakota Prairie Refinery and the City of South Hart. The City of South Hart is anxious to begin the construction of a pipe to connect their community to the wastewater treatment facility. So we're working hard to bring them a rate that covers our costs and is budgetarily for them is reasonable. So we hope to have these before you at the next City Commission meeting. The contract rate is something we'd like to have done maybe by the end of this week. Like I said, the City of South Hart is very anxious to get it done. The capital improvements plan, we continue to make adjustments and revise that plan. I didn't bring a copy for you this evening. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the financing side of that. We had another conference call with Wells Fargo today. It appears that loan, $30 million loan, is likely in terms of the projects that it will finance and the pledged revenue. And just as a reminder, the revenue that we intend to pledge for that repayment is the 50%, or excuse me, is the half-cent sales tax and water and sewer utility rates. We have already committed 30% of the 1% to the waste, or to the, excuse me, to the West River Community Center. We've also committed 75% of the hospitality tax revenues to pay the West River Community Center bonds, and we've also committed the net revenue of the water and sewer rates to the SRF loan on the influent pump station and water reclamation facility. So our revenue streams are becoming much more limited as we move through these financing processes. You'll also recall that American Bank Center, we're working through a $20 million loan with them. Those details will be forthcoming. And it appears that through SRF,
20 million with American Bank Center, or 15? I think, wasn't Wells Fargo 20?
You're right, I'm sorry,
and
you're right, it's
American
20.
Bank Center's 15.
Thank you, President Johnson, you're right, it's 20 million with Wells Fargo and 15 with American Bank Center, that's correct. We believe that with the SRF and then those two loans in addition to the West River Community Center that we can do all of our projects that are on our 2014 construction list. We are also, I'll be attending a meeting tomorrow with the North Dakota Oil and Gas Producing County Association to talk about the next biennium, the next legislative session, and what the strategy is going to be with regard to that group. And I can tell you that the initial strategy appears to be one of changing the 75%, 25% share right now under the GPT, or gross production tax. 75% is essentially maintained by the state, and 25% is shared amongst local political entities. And our goal is to have that number changed rather dramatically so that it is tipped in the favor of local public entities. I also believe as those dollars flow through, it's like filling a bucket, and then once that bucket gets filled, it goes to the next bucket. And in the very end, well, first of all, the very first bucket that's filled is the legacy fund. They get 30% right off the top. And at the very end, after all of these buckets fill, there's also an additional input into the legacy fund. So after they're all filled, 75% then goes to the state, and 25% goes into the legacy fund. I currently support removing that 25% to the legacy fund and putting that back into financing local public entities. I think that's a revenue stream that makes sense. You may be able to even increase the state share to 80%, because those are, a lot of those dollars are utilized by the whole state, not just Western North Dakota. And if, for whatever reason, price and production totals don't reach expectations, it will then be the first revenue stream that would be affected. And if we can adjust the percentages I mentioned to you earlier, the 75-25, and get that adjusted, we may have enough dollars to make a lot of people happy in Western North Dakota. But that'll be the discussion. I'll certainly report back to this commission on what the discussion was held. So that kind of concludes my reports portion of tonight's agenda, unless you have questions.
Any comments or questions for the city administrator? All right, we'll move to public safety, and we're going to hear from the fire department. And I missed a meeting or two here, so I'm not sure if I pronounced this fire apparatus correctly. Is it Sutphin?
Sutphin, that's
Okay.
correct. President Johnson, Commissioners, two things before you this evening. The first is the contract for the purchase of the apparatus that we're working with Sutphin Fire Apparatus to build for the city of Dickinson. At the January 6th City Commission meeting, Commissioners reviewed and approved our request to deal with this manufacturer on a truck that was under construction. You may note, if you looked at the contract, that the delivery date is different than what we had anticipated. And that's because in the short amount of time that it took us from the commission meeting to get back to them, that truck was no longer available. It was taken away. However, the company had another demo unit, just the chassis, online that they had just started, that they tagged with our name. As long as the process continues to go through, they're building it as a demo. They're considering it our truck. actually comes with 2 features the other truck did not have that is going to be available to us for the same price that was quoted to us. So, but it'll be a November delivery date versus a July delivery date. So this is the contract that's before you allowing the purchase of that truck.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Are there any comments or questions?
I'll move we approve the contract.
I'll second it.
We have the motion and the second. Any other discussion? Question I have, reading this, I'm assuming we're going to finance this over like a 5-year period, is that?
Yes,
the
sir.
idea?
What we're going to be looking at is actually a 7-year lease purchase.
7-year lease purchase, okay.
Right, and one of the things that I would like to consider is the increased dollars that we're bringing in, or that are being brought into Dickinson from the insurance rebate. Last year, 2013, at the end of the year, we received a check for $160,969, a little over half of what we were getting. From all indications, that's going to stay in place, and as Dickinson's growth continues, the dollar amount we receive will continue also. It's based on the insurance premiums that are sold in the area. Commissioner Steiner, I'm sure you are very familiar with it and can correct me if I'm wrong in any respect. But one of the things the state did ask in increasing that payback to the communities, it was a 50% payback before, we're receiving 100% of it now, is that it goes specifically to projects, equipment, or related items for the running of the fire departments in the state. This would be a definite use for that, to be tagged for that. So that's for your consideration.
Okay. Well, I think, you know, the commission and the finance staff can make that decision in November, how much money to put down and how much to finance and that kind of thing. Any other comments or questions? Okay, we have the motion and the second. There's no other discussion. We'll vote. Mr. Jackson?
Aye.
Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Mrs. Stuckert?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, so the motion carries.
Thank you. The next item is simply a report this evening. At the next commission meeting, there will be first reading of the fire department's intent to adopt the 2012 International Fire Code. We always lag behind the adoption of the building code because we locally have to go into the code, make amendments that match the building code as adopted by the state, or other amendments specific to the community. In this case, one of those amendments, in addition to the amendments to bring it in line with the building code as adopted by the state, one of the amendments locally will be to return the code to its original wording prior to the adoption of the 2009 code, which would again prohibit the sale of fireworks within city limits. Last year, we had 4 permits issued for stands within city limits. Those 4 permits were held by 3 individuals. We have gone to the addresses provided to us on their permit applications, and we have sent them each a letter letting them know of the intent of this. So, but that's part of what our 2012 adoption would include, going back to prohibiting the sale of fireworks within city limits.
Does the city have an option on that, or is that?
It does, yes.
It does.
In 2009, we looked at it as a business and a control experiment, so to speak, that we thought that it would be a good thing to allow it, to try to see how it would all work out with the control of fireworks within city limits. And from the fire department's point of view, it was an experiment that failed. So we would rather, it's a confusing issue. It's a confusing issue to the population that they can buy the fireworks at a stand located in town, yet they're not allowed to shoot them off in town.
Okay.
Chief, is our concern the hazard of the operation being in town for explosion or whatever, or?
That, although part of it, that's really a small part of it. It's more of the confusing issue that people don't relate the fact that they can go right down the street and buy them, even though we've restricted the areas where they can be located. They have to be in an industrial area. Certain spacing requirements have to be met. And quite frankly, without pointing fingers or mentioning names, the vendors themselves, not all of them, mind you, but some of the vendors themselves added to the confusion when people would ask, and we asked them to put up signs stating that the use of fireworks within city limits was prohibited. When they were asked by some of their customers what that was all about, they actually were told by the vendors doing the selling, oh, don't worry about that, it doesn't make a difference. We found that out through people that the police department ended up stopping and talking to because of the misuse of fireworks in neighborhoods. And that came back to us, that some of the vendors, a very small amount admittedly themselves, were adding to the problem. It's just something that we thought it was going to be a good thing. We thought it might be a control point, and I have to say that it's an experiment that failed.
Do you think that there'll be less fireworks set off in town if people go drive a mile out and buy them and come back into town versus buying them in town?
I would hope so. I know that selling them in city limits did not decrease the amount that was used within city limits, that in fact added to it.
What is Bismarck, Minot, Williston, Mandan? What do they do, do you know?
Well, in some of the communities that you mentioned, they have actually amended the code and the ordinance to allow the use of fireworks within a certain day and a time frame. We've talked about that. Chief Dossinger and myself and City Administrator Kessel have talked about that. Would there be some way to craft something that from July 3rd, sometime in the morning until midnight on the 4th of July, that yes, you can use fireworks within the city of Dickinson. And even better yet, there'd be a place where you could go to use them. So the whole issue of the neighborhoods being alive at 2 in the morning with fireworks going off would not be an issue. And City Attorney Colling has been a part of that also. It's easier said than done for many, many reasons. Most of the communities you talk about, Fargo, Bismarck, Minot specifically, do not allow the use of fireworks by the same code that we adopt, and they do not allow the sale of fireworks within city limits. Jamestown is an exception. They allow the use of and the sale of, if I'm not mistaken. Mandan allows the use of within certain days and certain time frames, but not the sale of. So it says, as varied as our state, again, depending on how each community deals with it. I believe Mr. Kessel can bring experience from Wapaton where it was allowed. Am I right in saying
Yeah,
that?
the sale was allowed, and the use was also allowed during certain dates and times.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
So that's just a report for this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll hear from the police department, Chief Dossinger.
Good evening again, Mr. President, members of the Commission. I also have 2 items for you this evening. First one's going to be a summary of the 2013 annual report. You all were issued books containing the full report. The first slide shows you the calls for service. We had the 25,308 calls for service. You can see how that workload has greatly increased since our community has grown with the oil activity compared to 2010 when we responded to 18,551 calls for service. As you can see, July was a busy month for us. That's fairly typical, followed by December and January. January and December, the workload is usually generated by weather-related and traffic-related issues. Busiest hour for us is Monday and Friday from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m., followed by Tuesdays and Thursdays from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. is our busiest time period. Our monthly accidents, you can see that December, we responded to 194 accidents, followed by January, in which we responded to 145 accidents. In 2012, we responded to 73 crashes in January and 109 in December. So you can see that in 2013, those are 2 very busy months for us. There are a total of 1,306 accidents reported to us. 294 of those accidents were hit-and-run related accidents. There were 52 injury-related accidents and 0 fatalities in 2013 within city limits. In 2012, we had responded to 1,238 accidents. and 60 injury-related accidents, and unfortunately in 2012 we had 3 fatality accidents. Most accidents occur on Monday. We had 185 accidents on Mondays in 2013, and most accidents happened between noon and 6 p.m. last year. In 2013, we conducted 7,109 traffic stops, compared to 6,829 in 2012. The importance of traffic stops is not only to increase driver awareness and reduce reckless driving on our streets, but also that's really a way how we find out who's actually in our community and do criminal interdiction work. That's usually when we need to get the criminal warrants, the people that are sex offenders that have failed to register within our community, and it really gives the law enforcement an idea of who's actually on our streets and moving around our community at certain hours of the night. Most of our traffic stops are conducted on Saturdays, 1,361, and most traffic stops, like I said, occurred between 6 p.m. and midnight. Kind of breaking down some of our arrests for 2013, you can see that there was a huge increase in disorderly conduct fighting calls, in which we responded to 131 fight calls last year. Our other huge increase you can see was responding to domestic violence, simple assault calls. We responded to, I should say that these are arrests. These aren't just actual calls responded to. These are where we actually made arrests regarding these calls. We made 79 domestic violence arrests last year. We had a huge increase in criminal warrant arrests. We had 185 warrants that we arrested people on last year. And you can see that our drug paraphernalia arrests were up. Our DUI arrests were slightly down. Time will tell if that has to do with the deterrence through the new DUI laws in the state of North Dakota. We had a total of 1,728 criminal arrests in 2013. Just a little over a 1% increase compared to 2012, 151 total arrests higher. Total highest percentage of arrests were made for first and second time DUI offenders. And like I said, the second highest percentage was for criminal warrant arrests. Our criminal investigative unit, they worked a total of 840 cases. 47 of those cases were assisting outside agencies such as social services, FBI, and the state's attorney's office. They did respond to 38 call-outs, and they averaged about 39 sex offender on their compliance checks that they checked on a regular basis in 2013. There were also 4 arrests through the Internet Crimes Against Children, which we have one investigator that spends a sizable amount of his time working the Internet Crimes Against Children. As you know, we also operate the dispatch center, which is called the Public Safety Answering Point. We have 11 dispatchers. Last year, they had dispatched over 10,000 911 calls alone. We dispatch for 19 agencies, which include ambulance, fire and rescue, and other law enforcement agencies. Right about April, we were able to put a full-time officer just to work truck regulatory within our community. In that time last year, he made 157 stops. Of those stops, 43 of those resulted in overload violations, with a little over $35,000 in fines collected for overweights since April of last year. Our tactical team consists of, had 10 call-outs last year. 8 of those occurred in Dickinson, and 2 of those occurred in Stark County. We do have 2 canines with our department. They generated about 117 calls for service last year, in which they were used for sniffs, vehicle searches. And one thing that we are trying to do is try to get into our schools as much as possible. We try to get them into our schools with their canines at least quarterly. We do have a school resource officer with the Dickinson Public School System. He was very busy last year. He handled about 146 calls in the schools. He did a lot of talks. He had about 25 unruly juvenile arrests and 13 disorderly conduct arrests and 5 tobacco violations. This is one position that we would like to see added in the near future. We'd like to see the public school system and the Dickinson Police Department add another school resource officer to spend more time in the elementary level schools.
Is the school district supportive of that?
They are, and we've been engaged in talks with them for about the last year. As you know, we have had an increase in drug activity in our community. Meth, as you can see, remains a problem. Big surprise there is heroin. In 2012, we didn't have any cases involving heroin. As you can see, that they made quite a rise in 2013 with heroin cases. We continue to pursue grants as much as possible. We received a little over $500,000 in oil impact grants geared towards law enforcement in 2013. The biggest one was for an update to our communication system. One of the problems we had is as our city limits grew, our officers had difficulty communicating on their portables back to the dispatch center. This is also an issue for the fire department. We did write a grant, and we did receive a $450,000 to update our communication system. That's a huge safety issue for us that we're looking forward to aiding, not only for us, but the fire department for getting that system in place. We also were able to purchase a truck regulatory vehicle and portable scales to go along with that vehicle. That makes it much more efficient and economical for the department to pull over vehicles without having to run the vehicles either out to the site, in which we'd have to use scales out at the garbage facility. Now we have the ability to use portable digital scales on site. We also received $6,200 to purchase more speed boards. Speed boards is what you see by Prairie Hills Mall that indicates, tells you what your speed and is a deterrent for vehicles. Other grants we pursue is a Department of Emergency Services grant. We purchased some equipment for our tactical team on there, such as some tactical vest panels, and also a FLIR thermal imager, which is mounted to our Bearcat. We continue to write DOT grants, which allows our officers to work overtime for occupant safety, impaired driving, and underage drinking. We also received a grant to purchase an in-car video camera for our squad car through that grant as well. We try to remain as, I guess, public relations is a huge issue for us. We continue to do the daddy-daughter dance, which is coming up in April of this year. We had over 700 participants last year. We did the National Night Out last year, which was a kind of a kickoff for that event for us. We had squad cars, fire trucks. We had the Life Flight ambulance service on site. We also did the Youth Academy last year, which 11 kids attended. They were able to attend 9 classes, and were also able to participate in ride-alongs. Are there any questions?
I'd just go back to the bar fight arrests that, you commented on, that they jumped significantly. Can you give us a little more color on that?
Sure.
What's behind that?
Bar time, I'll call it. We have a lot of people in our bars, at late hours, and a lot of times there's not enough elbow room in there for people to mingle. And once you get a lot of people that consume alcohol, sometimes they make some poor decisions, and we see an increase in bar fights. We have more people that are frequenting our bars than we have seen in the past.
Right. Other questions for the chief?
Just one, Chief Dossinger, because there's so many accidents on Monday, did people forget how to drive over the weekend, or?
They get the Monday morning blues, apparently.
Monday was a high, wasn't it?
Anything else?
If I could,
yes.
I want to go back to the bar fights. Did I hear you say not enough elbow room?
The bars are busier. Definitely there's more people that are occupying the bars. Sometimes, there's not enough space. Sometimes people bump into each other, and they're not actually, very polite sometimes. So.
Okay.
But they're not exceeding occupancy
No,
limits
they're
or
not.
anything like that. It's
No.
just,
As far as I've visited, what we've seen in the past, and a lot of the occupants are males, male occupants.
It's been a long winter.
In a long winter.
Thank you.
I do have one other item to
Yes,
report on.
go ahead, Chief.
For the last several months, we've been working with Dickinson State University to help address some of their safety concerns on campus. And part of our meetings proposal has came to light. They would like to see a sworn law enforcement officer on campus. And this idea has evolved over several meetings. This position would be a sworn member of our department and would be supervised by Dickinson Police Department administration. DSU would pick up 100% of the cost of this position, including pay, benefits, equipment, and training. Some of these duties would include supervising their existing security staff, setting up their schedules, and helping them work on their emergency operations plans. We see this as a win-win for both departments, not only DSU, but also the police department. We have drafted a proposed contract that Attorney Colling has seen and has looked at. Right now, it's just a report and looking for some feedback from the commission on this.
Any reaction to this initiative?
I think it'd be great.
Good idea.
And Ms. Stuckert, what'd you say?
I think it's a good idea.
Good idea. So 2 commissioners on the end think it's a good idea. So.
Okay.
I suspect the 3 in between do too. So.
I think it's a good idea. When 30 years ago, I was going to school.
I'm getting ready for this now.
I shouldn't have gone there. But when it was interesting and safety-wise that they had a school officer on grounds also. And when you'd walk from one end of the campus at night to the other end of the campus, I didn't have to worry about it, but you'd notice that the shadow would be following us. And then turned out to be the patrol officer on duty that night, just making the campus safer for everyone actually, but I'm surprised we haven't had one up there, a request for one up there sooner, just from night classes, from people moving back and forth to the dorms and everything, just someone on hand there.
So we will continue to pursue that idea.
I think the idea of an officer on campus is a great idea too. The one thing that jumped out at me a little bit was your first bullet in your memo that reads to me as though it would be kind of a supervisory position of DSU staff.
Correct. This position would supervise their existing security staff, non-sworn security staff, to include scheduling.
Which may lend some authority to those positions too. I think that when you're in college, sometimes you look at the campus police as not having full authority over you, but if a campus police officer can spy something or witness something and have an officer directly related to the police department to follow up, I think that
Yes.
adds some credibility to that.
Correct.
I guess what it said to me is that the position, probably going to be a position, somebody with a little more experience then.
Correct. We're looking at an officer currently within our department that's got at least 3 years of experience. So it'd be at least a senior patrolman level position.
Well, I think if you can do it, I think it's a good thing.
That'd be great.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Move to tab 6, engineering. Mr. Kubas, I think we'll just turn this over to you, and you can introduce each item and take us through them.
I can introduce the first item. Thank you, President Johnson. The first item is a KLJ task order amendment that I will have Loretta Marshik from the engineering department introduce. This was for the 12th Street construction project that finished up last fall.
Good evening, Mayor Johnson, Commissioners. This task order is to amend some added work that KLJ performed for us due to some additional studies and work that the DOT really requested of us, above and beyond what we initially asked of KLJ to perform. And so this amendment covers those tasks.
Do you think the amendment is justified?
Yes.
Okay. So your recommendation is we approve it?
Please.
Please. Okay, and this is in the, I'm trying to remember, I read it, I think the additional money is about 34,000, is that?
Correct.
Yep. And it was on the
12th Street
12th
West.
Street project there. Yeah, that was quite a long and extensive project.
Correct.
I would recommend approval.
So
Second.
We have the motion and the second. Is there additional discussion?
I should probably abstain from this vote.
Okay. We will go ahead and vote then. Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Mrs. Stuckert?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Jackson abstains, and the chair votes aye, so the motion carries.
Would you like me to present the next item? The next item is for a pipeline easement with BNSF Railway Company, and this is for a portion of our 24-inch dedicated water main that will be crossing their property. And it is the second of 2 easements that we've required for this project.
You're recommending that we approve the easement?
Yes.
Okay. Would there be a motion regarding this item?
I'll move we approve the easement.
Second.
We have the motion, the second. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Jackson?
Aye.
Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mrs. Stuckert?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that was pretty easy for you, Mr. Kubas. I turn it over to you, and you turn it over to her. What?
She
Why
took the
are
harder-
Why are we paying?
Why are you sitting up here and she's back there?
Well, I'll take a couple items here.
Okay.
The next item is just a report on engineering review fees. It kind of came to our attention a few meetings ago. We had updated and revised some of our review fees for code enforcement and building inspection. As we shifted those fees to the appropriate place in our fee schedule, we noticed some gaps missing in our engineering review fees. And this has become more and more a topic of discussion with developers as they submit plans to the city as to what the actual rates are. So we took a step back and reviewed all the engineering fees within our fee schedule, including plan review and our permit fees as well. So this will be our initial report on it. I think we'll have first reading for an amended fee schedule for engineering plan review and permits. The other thing that it would affect is a small section in our ordinance which requires the engineer to provide an estimate to the applicant about what their estimated cost of engineering review will be. How we'd like to approach that is that we will give them that estimated cost. It'll be a case-by-case lump sum fee that will be payable upon the building permit being issued, similar to how we bill out other review fee for code enforcement and for the review by the fire department. So I think this is going to help out clear up some confusion with the applicants as they're submitting plans to the city. I think some of our permits and the fees for those permits will become a little more clear to the applicant as well. Right now we have several permits with very small fees, $50 fees, that I think we'll try and combine if possible and get some uniformity among those permits. So at our next meeting, hope to have a reading of our first reading of an ordinance to amend that fee schedule. Are there any questions on the engineering review fees? If not, I'll move on to project updates. We do have several projects that have been bid recently and some upcoming projects that are going to be bid. We do have a map up above here. The next project coming up for bid is actually going to be bid this week. It's Empire Road. I guess I don't have a pointer with me, but around the new hospital site, Empire Road will follow a new alignment. And in conjunction with Empire Road, we will have a private street that's getting bid with that called Willer's Circle, all in that same area. That'll be bid this week. We do have a final plan review coming up this week for the finished water pumping station. Brant Mulsom with KLJ talked about that at our last meeting. That's the project down near the the water treatment plant. That really will be the lifeblood of our water distribution system. There'll be 3 pumps within that system that will deliver water to the city, 1 pump delivering water to other parts of the Southwest Water Authority's service area, and that project will be bid later this spring. So we're coming up very soon on that bid letting as well. And then we also have upcoming projects being 21st Street, and that project would extend from State Avenue west a mile out to the new business loop, and State Avenue project from 21st Street north to 40th Avenue.
And when is the 21st Street project going to be bid?
I believe it is early next month. I don't have the date.
It's sometime in March.
Yes. So that is an update of the immediate projects coming up for bid here shortly. Again, we'll have a very busy construction season. We have had some discussion to issue an RFP for a citywide public information officer to really coordinate with the media, coordinate with all our contractors to get the message out about traffic delays, potential delays to your water service at your home or place of business, because those things are going to happen with some of the projects that we have upcoming here. Especially, and I forgot to mention that there will be 2 large projects involving water distribution lines following East and West Broadway, and those projects do have some opportunity to disrupt some service temporarily for water service. So it'll be a very, very busy construction schedule coming up this summer.
Mr. Kubas, can we get this sent to us, emailed to us, that map?
Yes. Yep. It's it's pretty big, just size-wise. It you know, like you see here on the overhead, there's
Right.
there's a lot to see if you print it out on a small sheet, but we can sure get that out.
If you can.
You know, I think many people in North Dakota are used to using the DOT's road condition map that they pull up online.
Mhm.
Would it be possible through the construction season here to do a similar thing that we can put online and maybe on Channel 19, that you could show the, you know, with a color-coded road street condition as to the advisability for travel, that kind of thing? You don't have to answer that, just something to think about.
I'll think about that.
Yeah, that's a good idea. You know, I got probably more feedback from our last meeting from people about the map that was put up and everything that was going to be happening. They said that's the first time that they could visually see everything and where it is. You know, they hear about construction projects, they hear about things that we're working on. That made it very clear, and I think more of that we can do. This map that you provided tonight was excellent in keeping the people at home aware of what's going on and when. And if we can do more of that.
Commissioner Altmans, I presented this to the county commissioners and had this similar response. They really liked having the visual display of all the projects because it really is impactful. You know, talking, you can get lost in the numbers real quick, but when you see it, it makes an impact.
Definitely.
Anything else, Mr. Kubas?
No, I appreciate the feedback from the commission. We talk about these projects all day long, every day, and when I talk about them, I know where they're at in my head, and so it's good to hear the feedback, and we'll make sure we have visuals with our updates from now on.
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Altman. That presentation at the last meeting was just excellent. That was really a good presentation. Okay, we're going to go to Public Works. Items A and B, I have a conflict on, so I will not be participating in the discussion or the vote, and so at this time, I will just turn the gavel over to Vice President Jackson, and he will conduct the meeting.
Okay, the two items that Mr. Johnson is referring to both have to do with the Dakota Prairie Refinery, which Montana Dakota Utilities is currently constructing. The first is an amendment to an agreement that we made concerning various infrastructure. And Mr. Kessel, you're going to walk us through that?
I certainly can. Commissioner Jackson, as you began to explain, this project is relation to connecting the Dakota Prairie Refinery with our wastewater treatment plant. When we initiated that project, we had certain parameters, design parameters that existed in making those connections happen. The refinery was willing to finance that project on our behalf and construct it. But since that time, the design parameters have expanded, and we are contemplating the sub-area plan that was referenced earlier this evening and the possibility of annexations that will occur. And so the lift stations have grown in scope, in size, and of course in cost. Dakota Prairie Refinery is becoming less inclined to expose themselves to the risk of those costs, and so they would like us to participate in that risk beyond the $2.5 million mark. So what this agreement does then is it limits the risk of the DPR to $2.5 million, and then says that the city will bear the costs beyond that $2.5 million. We do recommend that the commission approve this agreement, and we have included the changes or alterations in the CIP plan.
Okay, and I know that the next agenda item is going to actually address the bid that's already been received, but can you summarize the dollars for us?
Certainly.
I think the bids came in good, as I...
They came in better than expected, yeah. We were expecting the bids to be between 4 and 4.5 million. They actually were received, and the low bidder is Record Steel and Construction, and that bid was 3.6, a little over $3.6 million. So our exposure is going to be about $1.15 million if we agree to the agreement revisions first.
Okay, any comments or questions from commissioners?
Yeah, this is such an important project, not only for Dickinson, but South Hart and everything in between. And, you know, I think although we're dialing back their exposure, we're still getting a lot of bang for our buck on this project moving forward. And we'll catch them on the flip side with Exit 56, so.
Anyone else?
Mr. Kessel, was the original agreement with Dakota Prairie $5 million?
No, the original agreement didn't really have a financial parameter to it. Where there was discussions of sizes of pipe and sizes of lift station and those kinds of things. But as that grew, the financial exposure also grew, and they became uncomfortable. I think it was also coupled with some other budget numbers that it grew on behalf of the construction of the facility as well. So they became concerned that their exposure was much greater than they originally anticipated. But I don't recall a number other than 2.5 being discussed initially.
I thought I saw 5 million somewhere a couple meetings ago, or $1 million, or last meeting. I don't know what that number referred to, but you don't know.
I don't know either. We've talked about a lot of projects last meeting.
I think this agreement was before us last summer, or early summer, I think it was, wasn't it?
The original was.
The original
yes.
agreement.
Yes. You approved that several months ago, I believe, in September.
Okay.
But at the meeting 2 weeks ago, we discussed this issue, correct? And there was something on the agenda that referred to 5 million, unless I'm mistaken for another project.
I'd have to do some research into that, Commissioner Steiner. I don't recall that conversation. I'm certainly more than willing to do that for you.
Any other comments?
I make a motion to approve Dakota Prairie Refining Agreement Amendment.
I would second that.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion on the motion? If not, we'll vote. Mrs. Dukart?
Aye.
Mr. Opmans?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. That motion carries. And the next item actually has to do with the bid that Mr. Kessel just discussed. Do you want to explain that a little bit more?
Certainly, quickly. The bid was held on February, or opened on February 5th with regard to the construction of the lift station and the line, the connection line. The low bidder of the project, as I mentioned, was Record Steel. With the actual bid was $3.654 million. And because there'll now be public funding in the project, we will take on anything above $2.5 million. We have to accept the low bid of Record Steel. So the recommendation this evening is that we accept the low bid of Record Steel to the amount of $3,654,400.
Okay, who would like to make that motion?
I would make that motion.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion on the acceptance of this bid? If not, we'll vote. Mr. Opmans?
Aye.
Mrs. Dukart?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. That motion carries. Mr. Mayor, you're back on.
I believe he used the word hustle when Mr.
Ingram was coming.
Oh.
Yeah.
This is as fast as I go. Thank you, Commissioner Jackson. I see you have reports listed for Public Works, but is there anyone here from Public Works to give them?
No, unfortunately, Public Works Director Zuroff experienced a death in the family and isn't with us this evening. He is most appropriately spending the time with his family. Our condolences go out to him and his family. The year-end solid waste report is on the agenda. You received a rather extensive review of the solid waste operations just a few weeks ago, so unless you have questions that I can defer until a later meeting, I don't intend to go over the details of that report. Although I do have a couple things I should mention to you. I should have mentioned in my report section, first of all, I extended an invitation to North Dakota DOT Director Grant Levi to attend a meeting, and he has accepted that invitation, so he'll be presenting to you in April. And he presented a rather powerful PowerPoint presentation to a legislative body that I've asked him to then present to you. And there's a particular slide with regard to construction costs, juxtaposing east and west, projects in eastern North Dakota and projects in western North Dakota. And I won't give you any more, I'll just tease you with that much information, but I'm glad to see that he will be coming to Dickinson and providing that report personally. We also are preparing a presentation to you on the Public Safety Center. You'll receive a 3D walkthrough of that building also in April by our architects. It's a rather impressive building, and you'll be able to see the structure in pretty good detail of what that'll look like in terms of office sizes, finish materials, site, and so forth. So they also anticipate being at about 50% design at that time, maybe a little bit further along, and therefore our GMP, or Guaranteed Maximum Price contract, will follow shortly after that meeting. So we wanted to educate you on that before you make a decision on the GMP. So with that, that concludes my reports for this evening, and thanks for your indulgence.
Thank you. Nothing from Community Development?
Mr. President, after 3 years, I'm taking a sabbatical and giving you a present and not presenting tonight.
Thank you. Anything by City Commissioners? Okay, anyone from the public wish to address the Commission? Mr. Radden, did You were whispering in my ear back there. I think, I don't hear so well. I think you were saying you wanted to address the commission. Now, you'll have to use the mic, and this is Ron Radden.
Ron Radden with Five Diamonds Development. We're building the Dickinson Hills Shopping Center. I just wanted to address the commission and explain what we're doing on the project and get some advice from you, because I'm working with the Corps of Engineers, and I'd like to do a little handout. And I told Ed I could do this in 10 minutes. He's got a small wager that I can't, so I'm just going to get right to the chase.
Side bets?
Thank you.
Real quick, I've been working with the Corps of Engineers for over a year. The project has a little stream that, here, let me turn this so you can see it. It's a stream that the water runs down right through here down to the wetlands every spring. The Corps of Engineers about a year ago determined that about a 20-foot, average 20-foot swath all the way through it was a wetlands. So we've been working with the city and the Corps for almost a year now, trying to determine what to do with it, where to put it, and so we all decided that it would go best up against the project up here. I've been working with them and telling them, you know, they don't understand. It's a 20-foot bottom, and I've entered into an agreement with the city that I wanted to maintain it, that the development would always maintain, if you want to call it, the canal. Because right now it's just a little stream. But once we end up developing it, bringing the dirt up to the street level, it's going to be down almost 20 feet. You know, Craig's shaking his head. It's anywhere from 15 to 20 feet deep through the whole project. Well, on a 2-to-1 slope, it goes out almost 150 feet wide. And then when you add on to it, if you go to the very back page, you add on to the property up here, the distance between the NDOT property, it turns into almost 200 feet, which is the length of this room, probably twice, of a green grass, you know, because I'm going to maintain it, so I'm going to put grass on it and put trees, but still, it's 20 feet down, and we can't touch the bottom of it. The wetlands you can never touch. And the weeds that grow on it, there's no cattails or anything, and I'm trying to work with the Corps to beautify it a little bit better. But about 2 weeks ago, I met with Mr. Jackson. We talked about it a little bit, and I went back to the Corps and I says, if we could build a park at the end of the development, now go back to the front page. Sorry, folks. But I says, if we could build a park at the end of the development that would be a wetlands park, something that could be utilized, something that could be an educational process for kids from grade school on up. What I'd like to do is get with Kevin over at the school and see if I couldn't even get the college students to come help us plan it. So it would, like, if you'll go to the second page, that's some of the pictures that we've done. The middle one is about 3 miles from my house. It's in Salt Lake City, and they utilized the middle top one, excuse me. The 3 top ones is what we'd probably end up with. And what we did is we took a detention basin, and the water that flows into that's usually what we're going to get in the wetlands that we're showing now. It'll be the low grass. And the way we've designed this is we got the detention basin / wetlands to where it's always pushing water, and there'll always be standing water in the wetlands park. So it'd be a place for the school kids to pull up, and they really do use it. I mean, the one that we've got, I could take pictures of the school buses. They're in there all the time. They pull up there and the kids go through. And I'd like to make a nice project out of it versus a 200-foot swath through the middle of the development. If you go to the second to the last page, it's a colored illustration, and this is how much it's taken, because it's a deficit to the city. The yellow part of it is what the detention, or what the canal is going to take out of the development. It's almost a quarter of the lots across there, which is almost 12 acres of ground, which is a loss to the city on a tax base because it's not going to be able to be taxed. It's going to become a wetlands. The orange is the difference between where NDOT starts and our property line is. That's where you tie them both together. And as the mayor can contest, because I've had him at lunch and an arm wrestling a couple times, I've been very passionate about this, and Ed knows this as well. I know what it's going to look like at the end of the day. I'm a developer. I have vision, if you want to call it. That's why I'm trying to put the big gateway over it. I've been trying to landscape it, or I've been working with Ed and Craig and everybody trying to figure out how we'd landscape it, literally put grass on it and trees. But it would look so much nicer, because I think this is going to be the gateway to the city of Dickinson in 5 years. And this is a commercial center, and it's going to be landscape beautiful. It's going to be maintained, because we're maintaining it through a CAM charge on the whole project. That's why I've been saying I want to maintain it. Anyway, to make a long story short, I'm within 10. I got back to the Corps of Engineers and I said, would you guys consider this park, this wetlands concept park? And they said they're starting to do them all over, and they said they would if the city wanted it. So I called Mr. Jackson. I says, can I present it to you over lunch? And he says, look, we're having the meeting tomorrow night. Why don't you come and share it with everybody? So next Tuesday, the 25th, the Corps is going to come out here. They're going to see the creek we're talking about that they have determined that's the wetlands. Take them down to the south end of it, show them where the water's already standing, and look about, you know, where we could put this. And it'd just be nice if I had the city's blessing, or had a few of you there, to say this is what we'd like versus what we're doing.
I guess I know I would look to Mr. Jackson and Mr. Catan and Mr. Kubas for their reactions.
Well, on the surface, I can embrace the idea of the wetland park. From an engineering standpoint, I know we did have concerns with the 2-to-1 slopes, maintainability and the stability of those slopes. So this proposal would alleviate those concerns with the channel. I don't know how all this fits in. I'm sure it's pretty preliminary in Mr. Radden's design as well. From an engineering standpoint, though, I think this is something that we've seen in Dickinson before. It probably hasn't been a part of a formal agreement. We'd need to look at some maintenance issues if we put this channel and bury it in a culvert instead of an open channel. But I do think it would clean up the appearance from the entrance of the, from the business loop looking towards the entrance into this shopping center. But I do have the meeting on my schedule for the 25th to meet with the Corps on site, so we'll look forward to that.
We've done quite a bit of engineering on it. The culverts that we're putting in, they're fairly large. They're $1,100 a lineal foot. They're 5 feet by 12 feet, and there's 2 of them side by side, because it's not only the wetlands, but we're absorbing all the water from the north, from Rohr's project, from the freeway. So it's been designed properly to go ahead and culvert the whole thing. To culvert the whole thing and build this park is going to be closer to $4 million versus the $1.5 million it's costing us now to leave it open. The truth of the matter is, it's the long-term appearance of what we're going to get. I'm trying to build a beautiful development, and you're going to come by and there's going to be 200 feet of grass. I'm going to make sure it's grass, and I'm going to plant it. But it'd be a lot nicer. How much time do I got?
Mr. Catan, do you have any comments?
Yes, actually, I spoke to Mr. Radden earlier today about this, and I love the concept of it. I mean, how many times do we have just basic Unitarian stormwater ponds that are very basic in nature? And if we could augment them and bring up the appearance and the style and make them more passive, I think this is a great idea. It's worth trying, seeing if it works, and if it is, then this could be something that we promote and try to have for our other developments that we do. So I like the idea. I've worked well with Mr. Radden, and I would hope that you would support this.
Mr. Jackson?
We need to do more of this in Dickinson.
So,
These can be really nice things and be very effective environmentally, be very effective from an engineering standpoint. Obviously, we're going to want to satisfy ourselves as to the engineering aspects of the culvert and everything that goes with it, and we'll do that. But this concept is a great concept.
okay.
I agree. I know that we've been trying to do this sort of thing at Patterson Lake or around Patterson Lake, so this would bring it in much closer, and if the Corps is willing to do it.
Well, and it's going to present itself with our new public safety center too. We're going to be building it near a wetlands, and so this, I think, helps pave the way for future projects like Mr. Corton said. I think this would be a good first step.
I will likely be out of town on Tuesday.
You're the one I wanted there the worst.
No.
Excuse me.
Well, if you need me for 100% of the city board here, I like it. I like the plan. It's great.
No, I think what the Corps is looking for, Gene, it sure would have been nice to have you there, but if you had Craig or somebody representing the city, and if I could put the mayor in a headlock and make sure he was there to where he could look at him and say, this is what we'd like to do, because apparently what's happened, the Corps was telling me, no, no, no.
What time is the meeting on the 25th?
It's at 11 o'clock. The Corps has just been adamant that it stays open and never touch that 20 foot of weed or whatever's going to grow down there. Since I did this, showed it to him, he went, okay, does the city like it? And I says, I don't know yet. I think they will. He said, if the city backs something like this, we like to see this as well.
But I think the Corps is concerned about mitigating the loss of wetlands, and this would do it.
Yeah, they're
So-
getting more here. Yeah, they're getting half again more.
I think the meeting's 10 Mountain, 11 Central Time.
Oh.
What time is the
you're right.
meeting?
Yeah,
My
it's
my
10.
invite was 10 Mountain Time.
10 o'clock, 10 a.m., and where will the meeting be at, Craig?
I want it on site.
On
because
site?
I wanted the Corps to see that all they're seeing is on paper. They don't know that it's just a ditch. The Corps thinks there's cactus and it's a wetland, so I want him to see that's what it's going to look like at the bottom of this 20-foot hole versus doing something like this.
Okay.
You know, I know that Game and Fish is really interested in protecting the downstream watershed, and this is going to go a long way towards doing that. So Game and Fish should be on board with this as well.
Yeah, Gene, I haven't talked to him about it, but see this big component here? It's a grease and oil separator. It's so any waters that do come down, which nobody's done, by the way. It's not part of the regulations. It's a baffle that they put in that collects anything that would come down the canal from clear up past the new road that you're doing up by Roars. So we've already designed that into it to keep it clean for the wetlands down there.
Well, if you're done, I will agree to show up at 10 o'clock. If you're not done, I'm busy.
No, I owe Mr. Curton a dinner.
How's that?
At the Brick House.
And
Thank you.
what I heard from our commission and our engineering and planning staff is they support it, and so I will, if need be, I'll tell that to the Corps of Engineers representatives too. So, and it's on site at 10 a.m.
Yes, we're gonna go down right where the road pulls off right now, where the little water injection well is. That's the only
Yep.
spot that you can really get down there.
Okay, I'll be there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah. Pardon? Oh, no.
Okay, is there anyone else that would like to address the commission from the public? Not, would there be a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
We have the motion, the second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. The motion carries. We're adjourned.